We knew that our high school group was going to be about the same size as our middle school group. So this is a good opportunity for us to be able to get started. I'd like to start by first saying thank you for taking the time this evening to be able to join this call, so that way you can learn a little bit more about where we want to be able to go with Mehlville at Home, kind of what it is, and really whether or not this is a right choice for your student and potentially your family as well. Introductions, my name is Brian Smith. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning in the Mehlville School District. Just wrapping up my second year in that position, and I can tell you that going into the beginning of the second year and where I ended at the end of the second year has been quite an interesting journey, needless to say. I appreciate all of you for kind of hanging in there with us as we figured out how to navigate from March until May. We've had some success, I think, over the summer with regards to our summer school classes, and our summer school classes were being done virtually. So when given a second opportunity and some time to be able to train teachers and students to some extent, it's pretty amazing about, kind of what the summer has looked like for our kids. I'll start sharing the screen here momentarily. I just want to kind of give you the summary of what you'll be looking at. It is 8 or 9 slides total. So there's not a whole lot. We'll go through some of the basic questions. I do know that there's no way that one presentation would be able to answer all the questions you may have. So therefore, I do want to encourage you, and you'll see it as soon as I share my screen, we're going to encourage you to be able to use the chat function at the bottom of your page, just off left to center. You'll see the chat button. You click on that, you'll open up a chat. It'll be enabled here shortly to be able to ask you questions, or for you to be able to ask questions. And we'll try to take some time as soon as that presentation is over. We'll spend the rest of the time on questions. And we'll try to get through as many of them as we can. We'll remind you probably a couple times too that we're going to collect these as a frequently asked questions document, and we'll share them out at a later time. So that way you can kind of see where have we landed. There will be some questions you're going to ask me. You'll probably be that hard teacher there. You're going to ask me the questions that stump me, because we don't probably have the answers to everything. But I want you to try to stump me a little bit, because those are the questions that will help us best build a program. Whether it's elementary, whether it's middle school, or it's high school, this is our third of 3 calls tonight. So I want to make sure that you understand, what would high school look like? But at the same time, we'll also have an elementary slide and a middle school slide. So on the off chance that you couldn't attend those sessions, we'll kind of glaze over a little bit about what does elementary look like and what does middle school look like. Also do me a favor, just kind of check your mute buttons, make sure that you're muted, and I'll start sharing here momentarily. Okay. So let me back up a little bit. I apologize there. This is where we should have been. So again, just a reminder, if you have questions, drop them in the chat section. We'll monitor those, and then we'll develop an FAQ. We'll share that with you at a later time once we are able to get some answers to some of the questions that you may have. So to start, what is Mehlville at Home? That has recently been branded as a virtual school for students in grades K through 12. So there are elementary opportunities, there's middle school opportunities, and there's high school opportunities. It's a choice we want to be able to offer families beginning in August. And any district student, any district resident student can enroll on a semester by semester basis. We ask for that semester to semester opportunity just so we can plan accordingly and to try to give your kid a quality experience. We understand that we don't know what January will look like, and we don't know if your student will love this or hate this, but we do need to try to at least do it one semester at a time so that we can plan and staff it as we. Why was it created? Well, part of the reason why it was created was to be able to meet the diverse needs of students and families. We do know that we have some students who are immunocompromised. And so school can be a very difficult thing even before age. And it can be particularly difficult in the. I'll ask everybody if you can just check your mute buttons to make sure that you're all muted. We also want to try to make sure we expand opportunities for personalized learning. Because we know that if we didn't learn anything else from March until May, that we know the importance and the significance of offering a personalized learning opportunity for each and every student, and having some of that be enhanced by technology. We also know and we recognize that some families may not want to send their kids back, maybe immediately, maybe not at all, maybe not until a vaccine. And all of those we understand. And so, our job as a school district is to try to make sure that we can provide opportunities for your family and for your student or students in which to be able to learn in the best way that they can. This is another program, platform, however you want to view it, that the district is going to continue to offer and to ensure that kids can be engaged. Because one thing that we do know is that school is a lot better experience when your kid is actually engaged. And so we have found sometimes that, kids from March until May, they had the best engagement when they went online. Other kids did not have the best engagement when they went online. So every kid is different, and we want to try to make sure that we can provide what we need to every kid where possible.
Pardon me, Dr. Smith. It did look like the chat was enabled. I guess maybe it is now.
Okay, I'll have Jessica Papillo, and so I should also do a quick shout out to Jessica and Hunter. They are our communications team, and so they're kind of running things from behind the scenes. So thank you for pointing that out. The elementary level, I recognize this is a high school conversation. I just want to make sure we kind of highlight a few things. What are we teaching? What are we doing? And so you can see at the elementary, English, math, science, social studies, music, PE, and art. Those are the things that are on a student's report card. Those are the things that we assess. So, those are the things that we will provide a level of instruction from. The goal is to try to figure out how to be able to do that with Mehlville School District teachers. In the event that we can't, then we would certainly consider using another platform, whether that be things like Edgenuity that we already have a partnership and licenses with, or even potentially another platform. You can see the elementary level, we're planning on a K1 band, a 2-3 band, and a 4-5 band. So 3 classrooms covering 6th grade levels. You can see the middle school level. This one will look a lot like your high school slide, but these are the things that are taught or assessed at the middle school level. When you look at a report card, those are some of the things that appear on a report card. So the things that are assessed are also the things that we will be teaching. And again, whether that's with a Mehlville certified teacher or through something like Edgenuity, there are still some questions that are out there just with regards to numbers and staffing and trying to figure that all out. So I don't have an exact answer for some of these pieces, but at the end of this particular presentation, you'll be asked to either have if you've got a QR app reader on your phone, or if you want to take a screenshot on your computer, or if you just want to get out your cell phone and take a picture and come back to a bit.ly address that you'll be able to fill out later. We're just seeking kind of a non-binding commitment to say, okay, where do you stand as of today based upon the information maybe that you've heard? Again, non-binding, it's the end of June. We know a lot can change week to week, much less month to month. So we'll be asking at a later point in time for a stronger commitment. But part of this is to get through these slides so that you have a better idea. So at the high school level, with where we're currently at, we've not offered anybody any positions per se, but we've interviewed folks and we've got a pool kind of identified in that process about having a certified teacher. We'd like to be able to expand upon that, but sometimes teacher certifications make it a little bit more difficult. In order to teach science, sometimes you have to have either chemistry certification or biology certification or physical science certification, unless you have a particular science certification that's called Unified, which allows you to teach basically everything. So sometimes we have limitations where we have to have the people who have the certifications in order to be able to teach some of these things. But you can see, what are things that we assess? Well, English, math, science, social studies, career, languages, fine arts, PE, you can see the whole list of them. And so our goal again is to try to have as many of those taught by either Mehlville certified staff or through a program such as Edgenuity. We already have a partnership with. We use it during the summer school opportunities we have for years. And it is a curriculum that is simply updated and revised in order to be able to create a learning experience. It has a balance of both it's asynchronous communication. It's one-way communication that is video fed, as well as some content behind the scenes that is controlled. It's based on standards. So it's based on either state standards or it's based on national standards when somebody does not have a particular state standard. So to talk a little bit about Mehlville at Home and how does it compare to an in-person school. And I use the word in-person. Before, I think I had it called regular or normal. And I don't know if there's too many things anymore that are regular or normal. So at least in-person helps kind of capture the essence of what school has been, and then the potential of what Mehlville at Home and how it changes the game. So we do want kids to have an engaging experience. We do know that students, especially the older that you get, are usually more engaged with technology and the variety of platforms and tools that are there. We also know that kids, especially at the high school level, aren't necessarily afraid to make mistakes when it comes to that, and are usually our best learners when it comes to technology. So many times the usage of technology is not a barrier for them, maybe as it would be for us who are a little bit older, potentially in the process. We do want to have kids have some level of choice in their pacing. That means that if you've got all these things due, it may not look like a typical high school schedule. It may be that these things are due on a particular day of the week, rather than something due on Monday or something due on Tuesday, so on and so forth. So having some level of choice in pacing and how you go about doing this, kind of a menu approach, is the way that this program could certainly set itself up for. We will be using the same district curriculum that we would use for in-person school. We would use that same thing for Mehlville at Home. I think that's an important point to make sure that I hit, simply because part of it's going to be, well, what are you going to teach? Well, we would be teaching the district curriculum, and our district curriculum is based around state curriculum. In the absence of a state curriculum, it would be the essence of a national curriculum. Just so you all are also aware that Mehlville at Home students would also take the same assessments as their in-person school peers. So not only would they, they'd have quizzes, they'd have tests over the same kind of content material, they would also be, assessed for things like intercourse assessments. There are a few that have to take that are part of the required suite of tests that are administered on an annual basis. So our kids in Mehlville at Home would have that same exact experience. They would just do it virtually. So if I'm sitting in your shoes as a high school parent, one of the questions I certainly would want to know is this different from what was offered from March to May? And the answer is yes. Part of it has been because we've been able to plan. We had time to plan since March to be able to say, well, what would this look like if we had more than a week or two to be able to kind of come up with a plan that impacted 10,000 kids and 750 teachers. When given a little bit more time, our curriculum team, I've been incredibly impressed with the work and the time and the commitment in which they've put in to be able to kind of get all of our learning experiences to another level. For those of you who have some middle school or elementary school age kids, you may very well have found that the summer school experience was much more robust than what probably some of our experiences were from March until May. Part of that's just using platforms, part of that's getting to know it, and really part of it's also expectations and comfortable, getting the comfort there with teachers. So I know that our summer school teachers and our summer school administrators really helped give a better understanding of what virtual instruction could look like when given time in training. So speaking of training, the teachers, once we do select them, will receive some regional as well as national training on best practices in teaching virtual. So just like the conversation we're having right now is a synchronous two-way conversation. Well, it's really one way right now until we open it up for some of the chats. We partner with the Institute for Personalized Learning. They're based in Wisconsin. They've provided us, some quality professional development resources at Mosaic, as well as the middle school academies, as well as to a lesser extent the MyPath program at the high school. So, they have been a really good partner. They're smart. They know exactly what they're doing, which is the kind of training and information that we want our teachers to have. So know that the teachers that you're going to have will not be winging it. They will have a much better understanding of what it means to be able to teach virtually. One of the questions I would also expect probably some of you to have is, what does a typical Mehlville at Home day look like? Depending on the learning management system that we use, and when I say those words, I mean, before we used Google Classroom, we used Google Meet. The district is considering, working into an agreement, to provide something that is a little bit more comprehensive and a little bit easier for parents and students in which to be able to kind of house all of their work or their communication. So we're looking at that. So I listed in live Google Meets. Obviously, there will be live instruction based upon the teachers that would be Mehlville teachers. There would also be some level of asynchronous one-way communication that would be video fed if we use some platform like Edgenuity. We also would have learning activities that you would also complete on your own time. So those would be kind of independent learning. So, it goes to the I teach, then we do it together, now you do. It would be some of those types of activities so that kids can have it, they can hear it, and especially if it's a video feed, one of the advantages of that is that videos can be rewound and watched again if needed. That's especially helpful, I think, sometimes in math to ensure that you kind of have the step-by-step process. We also know that, again, as I mentioned, being engaged in learning is really important. And we do want kids that decide they're going to want to do this kind of program. We want them to be engaged, just as, if not more so, than the kids that are in-person school. It's going to be really important that students who decide they want to be able to do this are students that like this style of learning. It's one thing to do it out of convenience, but if you do it out of convenience and your student doesn't love online learning, it can make for a less than desirable experience. So it's really important that the student buys into this kind of process as well. Another question, one of the last questions is, will Mehlville at Home be around after COVID-19 is over? So one of the things that COVID-19 did was it caused us to be able to dramatically accelerate the process that we had and that we were going to put in place. We were already considering this. And this allowed us to kind of stomp our foot on that gas pedal and to say, we're going. Because we recognize that providing a virtual option and to people who want it or to people who need it is really important. Whether it's due to COVID-19 or whether it's just due to other situations families may have. Our plan is to continue to provide an opportunity for some level of virtual education for those that would want to have access to it. If we can do it through Mehlville means, that's great. If it needs to require something else, then that may be in time what we end up doing too. It's hard to tell the future, but we do know that our goal here is to be able to help kids succeed no matter what their need is. And as I mentioned, this having a pandemic certainly accelerated our timeline quite a little bit. So this is kind of well, I'll say the last screen, but I do know that there's a screen that I have neglected to show in the first two, so I don't want to forget about this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to advance forward, I think, one or two more slides. It's this one. So from a social media standpoint, especially for those that Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, there's several different ways in which you can follow us. So this might be one that's worth a screenshot or worth a follow to come back later and to be able to take a look at. And we made it a bit.ly address to make it a little bit easier to be able to access. So I'm going to go back one screen and I'm going to walk you through this one real quick. So this one basically says, if you live within the district, you can enroll in Mehlville at Home. And, we're going to be looking for enrollment information in probably late July. As I mentioned before, we're not asking for a binding agreement at this particular point in time. We realize that things may happen and you may need some more answers. Some of those answers I'll try to provide here, in the time that we would have left. And others may not be answers that I have immediately. So if you stump me, that's great. It gives me things in which to be able to think about and try to be able to plan for. But if you have a QR code, or if you want to take a screenshot, or if you just want to take a picture of the screen, that would be super helpful. So that way you've got the information that you need, and you can provide us some information to say, yeah, we're strongly considering it, or maybe no, this is, after hearing it, maybe this is not what I want. And that's okay too. You know, we want to make sure that you make informed decisions, just like the district always tries to make informed decisions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Papillo, who will help moderate some of the questions. I'll answer what I can answer, and if I can't answer it, I'll just be honest with you and say, I don't know the answer to that one, but you've stumped me, and we'll do our best to include things as part of our frequently asked questions. So don't forget, drop your questions that you may have in the chat, and some of them may be replicated 2 or 3 or even 4 times. So just, we'll try to get to every question we can.
Okay, so as you know, high schools have a large variety of different classes and opportunities for kids. So we're getting a lot of questions about some of those specialized classes. For example, would kids have access to AP classes?
So at this particular point in time, we have not finalized exactly what classes would be there. We do know that with Edgenuity, that it does provide us the potential of having some access to some AP classes. I can't sit here and tell you right now that we're ready to roll it out. We've been doing some planning even before March, prior to the pandemic, to be able to make some adjustments and to expand upon what we were doing in that Edgenuity platform. I do think that from an in-person standpoint, that may be particularly tough, just because with only having a handful of in-person teachers, you know, who will probably have to teach a whole variety, because a freshman, a sophomore, junior, and a senior would have, even if a basic classes, English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, American History, World History, so on and so forth. Yeah, you know, you've got physical science, you have chemistry, you have biology, you have a lot of classes. And if we don't have a live staff member that's teaching every single one of those classes, all I can say is we'll do our best to try to plan for that and have the curriculum team adjust for that. But I don't have the answer at this very moment in time.
So will Mehlville at Home have be graded with letter grades, or will it be more like the spring where we had a pass-fail?
It will
grade?
be great. It'll be graded with letter grades. So at the 9th grade through 12th grade levels, it'll be A, B, C, D, and F. And I know, in case there's any question about it, because I've taken a few, because I've had high school parents ask me, are you planning on taking standards-based grading to the high school level? And the answer is no. You know, it is not necessarily at this time, and I'm not saying we're doing it in a year or 2 years. We are slowly rolling that piece up through the 8th grade level, and that's all that we have decided at this particular point in time. So I don't anticipate us moving forward. We recognize the issues that come from trying to use a system like that at the high school level, when you're also dealing with post-secondary institutions that also have to deal with those types of things too. So, you know, we're trying to, we feel like standards-based is certainly a positive piece at the elementary school level, and we've been doing it there for 11 years or more. This will be our 2nd year at the middle school level, but high school, having been a high school principal for 10 years myself, I understand what that system looks like really well. And so to try to help kids through that and help teachers through that, the word is not there.
Another question, can students who have an IEP participate in Mehlville at Home?
They can. You know, we do not discriminate on the basis of any protected class. So it's important that if a kid has an IEP, we would partner with special school district to ensure that the student has the opportunity to be able to access classes they want to be able to take online, and then for whatever, you know, accommodations or modifications they would need. Now, I will say that certainly some levels of disability are harder, and so you kind of have to think about, you know, if your student is receiving physical therapy or occupational therapy or maybe sometimes speech, those are harder to probably do having a son who receives physical therapy and occupational therapy and speech. Trying to do some of those things virtually through teleconferencing is hard. And I know Special School District had not really gone there so much. I'm sure that they will be planning for that. I don't know what their final plan is currently, but you know, if a kid has an IEP, that in no way stops them from enrolling in this program.
Helpful if I unmute myself. Will there be a point when we'll have a sort of class list, so to speak, for Mehlville at Home? I think there's a lot of questions about what types of classes would be available through that program that a class list might answer.
Sure. And I think that's, you know, from a high school perspective, that's kind of where the mindset goes, is what classes are my kids going to take? Does it meet all the graduation requirements in order to be able to graduate in time? And, you know, do I have the level of, you know, variety that, you know, I would want to be able to have? You know, our goal here is to be able to get a class list together soon, so that way you can review it. And for us to be able to go through and say, here are the things that we're going to be able to offer. Like I said before, when you look at our college and career planning guide, we're pushing something like 300 courses that are offered at the 9th grade through 12th grade level. That's a lot of courses. So for us to be able to replicate all 300 courses online, that's probably not feasible. But we do have to figure out, well, what can we offer online based upon, you know, the number of people that we have that will be teaching, and what do we have access, you know, to us that we can modify as appropriate through things like Edgenuity. Edgenuity is what we use during the summer for summer school. It's not only credit enhancement, we use it for credit recovery as well as for credit and enhancement. So there are some opportunities there that we, as I mentioned before, you know, prior to March, we were looking at some things, and then COVID-19 happened. And then, you know, we were trying to be able to assist teachers and students to how best to be able to learn in a situation where, you know, parents took on some of the onus or responsibility of teaching, which we know is a hard thing to do. So we will get a list out soon, so that way it can help inform your decision.
What about kids who attend South Tech? Can they participate in Mehlville at Home also? And is there an opportunity for sort of a hybrid? Some classes are taken through Mehlville at Home, some classes are taken in person at school.
So, you know, at this particular point in time, I think we're still working through some of the details, but I do think that based upon the way that a student's schedule, and with the flexibility and the choice in which we're offering things like CAPS, Center for Advanced Professional Studies, South Tech, you know, as of right now, South Tech is, I think, planning on starting in person, because again, how do you do a virtual technology school, you know, and how do you do virtual welding, or how do you do virtual, you know, some of these plumbing? That I think sometimes that's probably watching YouTube videos, but sorry, I digress. I think it's really, you know, I think the potential is certainly there for it, because, you know, what we want is we want kids to be able to be a full-time student, but to be able to take classes that are of interest to them. And so we already have kids who are sometimes part-time here and part-time there, who do it in other things. So I think that this could be an opportunity for them to say, I want to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I would throw out certain courses, and at the high school, since there's over 300, you think about choir, you think about art, you think about orchestra, you think about band, you think about woods, you think about family and consumer sciences, you think about some of these courses, and they're hard to replicate virtually. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't try to be able to do something, but just some courses aren't designed to be virtual in nature. You know, no matter how well you try to do a virtual orchestra is a hard thing to be able to do. I'm virtually conducting all of you right now, and that you can see that. I mean, that's a little hard. Maybe that's because this is my third one in a row that I've been answering questions for a while, but we'll do our best to be able to offer what we can offer. But I do know that it's going to be difficult to probably offer everything that everybody may want.
So can you explain kind of what a day of learning looks like? We're getting questions about, are there set class times? How much time would students be spending in front of their computers, that sort of thing?
Sure. So, and I think that's a really good question. Unlike a college schedule where a kid maybe gets to pick the class on the day of the week they want to take it or the time that they want to be able to take it, because you're dealing with, a physical person to some extent, there will be some limitations as to when that person's actually teaching their class. So this is not necessarily something that, you can just watch the recording and you can watch it at 11 o'clock at night. Some classes, without a doubt, will be based upon the schedule that a teacher holds. Some classes, without a doubt, maybe you can get it done when you need to be able to get it done, and you can pace it as you want to be able to pace it. So there will be some level of choice, but not completely. And I think that's just what happens when you're dealing with a live person and you're not watching an asynchronous one-way video feed where you can go back and watch it again if you had some questions, but you're not physically talking to that person. That person could record it at any point in time. That's not what all of our classes are. We want our kids to have some level of two-way synchronous communication, so that way we have a teacher that's a Mehlville teacher that can check in on kids, because we know that also, we haven't said it, but building relationships is really important. And this is the last opportunity that we have to be able to build relationships with our kids. And I mean that in a professional and positive manner, because we know that, we all probably had some favorite teachers when we were in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And what made that experience was probably our love of a subject, and probably more importantly, the way that that person treated us. And so it's important to me, and I think it's important to a lot of people, that our teachers have an opportunity to engage in a two-way conversation. Because if everything's just one-way video feed, that tends to take away some of the personal nature, I think, of learning.
Also, a big part of the in-person high school experience is extracurriculars, athletics, clubs, all of those sorts of things. Will there be opportunities for Mehlville at home students to participate in their home schools, extracurricular activities?
The answer to me would be yes, because the only requirement that I think we have when it comes to, if you're talking about like Missouri State High School Activities Association for like things of your sports or your marching band or like quiz bowl and things of that nature, is that they have some minimum requirements they have to be able to meet, both enrollment wise as well as earning credit from a previous semester wise. And so we're not withholding other experiences from kids. What is interesting though, and that's just a family decision, is that from a learning standpoint, if you say I want to have my kids have it online, and if it's medically related, then you just have to consider, are you wanting your kid to be able to also participate in activities that promote the social piece? And we know how important that is. It's just, we're kind of living in a goofy time right now, or we're practicing social distancing, and it's not the kind of social nature that all of us have grown up with and have experienced. So we're not saying that they can't. They certainly can. They can participate. They just have to figure out how that's going to be, because it may not. Some of these social opportunities, extracurricular, they're not in a virtual opportunity. They're going to probably be in-person opportunities. So you just have to balance some of the decisions that you would make as a family to say, if that's important and it's only offered in person, then you just have to make sure that you understand, is that what you're wanting? Is that what, and really most importantly, it's not even so much about all of us on the screen, what we're wanting. It's about what our kids want. What do our kids want? And to try to provide opportunities that our kids can have to be able to grow and to learn.
Battery 100%.
There's a question on there about attendance from Joanne. And so attendance it would be similar to what we kind of done for summer school. That's a really good question that nobody's asked yet. So thank you for asking that. Attendance, kind of the way we've done it in summer school, is that there's kind of an expectation. And it's really two parts. One of those is that you can see me. Another part is I'm engaged, whether that's in the chat or whether that's speaking. Now, we know that not everybody can speak at the same time, and not everybody can participate in the chat at the same time. But engagement is going to be really important. If my screen went black and I muted myself, which is fine for what people are doing here, you wouldn't necessarily know. And it's harder for me to make an assumption about the level of engagement. If all I saw was a name and it stayed, dark and, the line across the microphone the entire time, it's harder to take attendance. You may have logged on, but I don't necessarily know anything else above and beyond that. And then it's left to a teacher to have to make some decisions about that. Going through academic integrity, that's a really important piece. We don't want kids to cheat. What we do want, though, is we want to make sure that kids can engage with other kids, even if it's in a virtual setting. And what's so interesting right now, and I'm not sitting here advocating for it, but Google and certain apps on your phone can pretty much tell you most everything that you would ever need to be able to have. And we have at our tips of our fingers, the ability in which to be able to probably look up more information than ever before. So what becomes probably particularly important is if you go back to the standards that are being assessed, standards many times do not look at just facts and figures. They look at understanding and comprehension and the ability in which to be able to talk about things. That promotes engagement. So that is how we would kind of look at attendance. And that's how we would look at academic integrity as well. Because if I give you a test where you can look up all the answers, I think we may find that some of the assessments may not look like the way that we all took them when we were in high school. Assessments, like everything else, have changed too. And what we ask kids to be able to do may be more project-based, or it may be locked down types of information where we can do it in a Google form. And it may not be a summative kind of exam, like here's what you learned at the end of a chapter or at the end of a unit. There may be progress that's continuing to go on more regular basis so that our teachers can use that information to do a better job of potentially teaching or reteaching things that maybe a kid didn't get the first time around.
Are there any class size limits for virtual Mehlville at home?
So I think within reason there would be. I don't know exactly what that number is right now, but I mean, trying to sit in a class of 200 probably is not a very good idea. Sitting in a class of 100 is probably not a very good idea. Those are the kinds of classes that you experience if you go to a post-secondary school like Mizzou and you sit in a lecture style class. That's not what we're looking to be able to offer, because it's hard to personalize if you have like 100 kids in your class. So we'd want to try to have it at a reasonable level. There are guidelines that the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education encourage. And while, it could be, some of the high school classes I think could be 30. I don't know what that number is, because right now we don't know exactly how many kids we would have who want to enroll for the program. But we're going to be mindful of that. We're not going to, have one teacher trying to teach 100 kids at a time, because that's particularly difficult if you do it in the way that we would expect it. And that is for a teacher to be able to engage their class. It's one thing for me to engage you all, because with the way we have it set up, it's really, you're asking questions via chat, but you're not asking questions via voice. For us to have the greatest conversation, we just open everything up, and we're probably on here for a few hours, but we could probably solve all the world's problems. So, but that's not how, when you look at the system, that's not how, we don't want it to be a one-way communication. We want it to be two-way where it can be, and in the places where it can't be, we want to make sure that we have somebody behind the scenes that's monitoring progress as well.
And there are some questions about how particular classes could be taught in a virtual environment, specifically, I think the science labs. Do you have info on how that's been done?
That's a really good one, and I don't have, it's kind of you stumped me. I expected it, but if I'm doing a chemistry lab, if I'm doing a dissection lab in biology, that's hard to be able to do. You can imagine that the teacher could probably do some level, but even with our screen size, the way that we would have it right now, you would imagine we would probably have to have some other types of pieces of equipment, like a document reader that, where you could do, a dissection. It would, some of that stuff may be more video based potentially. But that's where, you know, that's a good question. I don't have the answer to that one exactly. So I'm not going to try to make something up.
And then will there be opportunities for small group interaction, kids working on projects with other students, and then some of those social opportunities that you find within a school community?
So I think from a small group perspective, yeah, I think it certainly would allow the opportunity to be able to do a small group project, even though you're trying to do it virtually. It's kind of what we used to do when we couldn't get a hold of one another. We have to do some stuff over the phone. So at least kids can see one another and they could potentially engage with one another. So I do think that that's there. And with regards to, you know, some of the other social activities that are, you know, before school or after school types of things, again, we're not going to limit what kids want to be able to do. They would just have to meet whatever requirements would be in play for like activities or sports like that. You know, so some things like, again, Missouri State High School Activities Association has some requirements on things like sports and a certain number of activities, but a lot of those other things don't. And so, you know, if you are in a drama club, or if you are, you know, part of, you know, journalism, if you're doing things like that, you know, just trying to figure out how do you find a way to connect. And again, are you as a family or you as a student, are you good with the kind of a blended approach? I think the potential is there to be able to do it. We haven't locked that down quite yet because we would probably need to work with our high school counselors a little bit so that they know what processes in which to be able to follow.
Then what about students who are participating in A+ tutoring? Is that available virtually?
So that is going to be a conversation, and I just want to check here something real quick to see. I'm not sure if he is on the line or not. I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Gaines tomorrow about the potential of what we're looking at from a summer school perspective, and to be able to get a few hours. You know, would you be able to virtually tutor to get some of your A+ hours? The answer is maybe, but we would have to figure out some of the platforms for that. You know, we're kind of starting to tinker a little bit with that now. Well, at least proposed. So, you know, we're looking at some of these pieces. I don't have a final answer on that one yet, but the district has already started to do some planning around that.
And then will students have access to counselors and career and college counseling as well as general counseling?
So the answer to that is yes. Now, does it mean that they're going to have like a virtual Zoom once a week with a counselor? They would always have access to a counselor just like they've always previously had access to a counselor. Obviously, the difference here is that you may not necessarily be able to walk in the door as you would before if you're physically in school. That would be a piece we would just have to work with the counselors on, and I would have to work with Adam Smith, who's our executive director of student services, and he oversees the counselors, to try to figure out how to be able to build that in, whether that's with the individual grade level counselor or whether that's with our college and career readiness counselor.
And I think we're getting some just general return to school questions. So if we could just clarify that Mehlville at Home is truly a new virtual school that will operate throughout the year, regardless of what's going on in our in-person schools.
It is separate and independent. So if we at any particular point in time had to shut down, and again, it's not like that would be just a district decision, that would be likely a county-wide decision. If we had to shut down and we had 10,000 kids that weren't in school again, none of us are hoping for that in the slightest bit, but you know, we also will do what we have to be able to do to try to provide education. The kids that would be in that kind of shutdown and then having to figure out relearning, I'm confident that we would do it better the second time around because we'll have some more time and some more training to be able to prepare for that. We really didn't have that because what happened when that went down was we were on spring break. And so we didn't really see it coming. If we would have even had a week, we would have probably been able to, you know, obviously do a little bit better job than certainly what we had. And we would have maybe been able to provide a little bit more of a rigorous and robust experience than maybe what was there. It wouldn't have been able to replace the technology issues that kids were going to run into. It wouldn't have been able to replace the disengagement issues and all of the other issues, around family members having COVID-19 or, all the other factors. And I know somebody had included in here, Carl, I think it was you, about the psychological effects on students and online. There's a lot of, social emotional learning and trauma-informed pieces that we also have to take into consideration. And so we know that when kids return, if they are returning in person, we've got some work to do, and none of us are shying away from that. We're here to be able to help and assist kids the best way we possibly can. And we want to make sure that kids are well taken care of, no matter which platform they choose.
I have a question.
Yes.
So after spring break, doing everything at home, it was fine for us. We didn't mind that one bit. The only thing was, of course, missing the teachers in person and missing the class. It would have been nice if maybe it was like more Google Meets type thing. And of course, then, you working really hard to earn your grade and you didn't get to keep, it was just pass or fail. That kind of was a bummer. So if that type thing was to happen again next year or this coming school year, would the kids get to keep the grades that they earned, or would it just be pass or fail?
The plan would be, for me at this particular point in time, is they would get to keep the grades in which they had, and they would continue to work on that. Having been a high school principal, I understand that, if you have a typical kid that's going to graduate in 4 years, that, if you look at a transcript, we will have included a little note on a transcript for all kids to kind of explain what happened in the spring of 2020. But we also know that if that were to happen a second time, and we were to have, from a not from a credit perspective, but from a GPA perspective, some, certainly some students and some families will need that or will want that due to the potential of some scholarship opportunities that would be out there that would be GPA driven. And so that's why we've included the note on there for it to kind of explain the spring of 2020. It'll appear in your son or daughter's transcripts as they would be shared out to post-secondary institutions when the time comes. I think that technically covers kids in grades 8 through 12. So they would get to keep, obviously, I think the plan for me would be is they get to be able to keep their grades. The problem that we run into is just, again, it goes back to engagement and communication. And that's a piece where I would want to work with building principals to ensure that we had engagement and communication. That's a good question. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to jump in and with a quick reminder, I know we haven't gotten to all of the questions in the chat this evening, but we are collecting them all. Some of them are just kind of really good food for thought for Dr. Smith and his team as they continue to plan for Mehlville at home, and we'll be using them to create a frequently asked questions document. And we'll also be sharing the video on our website. So if you came in later, you missed part of it, or people who wanted to be here this evening but couldn't make it, that video will be available on our website. So I'll just kick it back to Dr. Smith for some kind of closing thoughts.
Sure. So I also know that Dr. Gaines is on the call, so I'll quickly turn it over to him. I do just want to say thank you for taking the opportunity again to sit here tonight to ask some really good questions. My team will kind of take all these things back and start work on how do we do some of the things in which you're asking or the concerns in which you have. So we'll do our best to be able to try to address as many of the questions and create processes to be able to do that. We recognize we may not be able to, especially at the high school level, with having over 300 classes, it can sometimes be a little difficult to do that, but we're going to do our best to try to make sure that we create an individual experience that kids can enjoy and still feel a part of school, even if they choose to be able to do it in an online fashion. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Gaines for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'm going to apologize, everyone. I am not going to be on video and my sound may not be great because I'm on a satellite internet connection. And so you never know how that's going to kind of go through. But I do want to again thank everybody for joining us tonight, especially Dr. Smith and his team, our communications team, who have kind of sat through 3 of these. And Dr. Smith has talked for about 3 hours tonight as he's tried to explain elementary, middle, and high school and try to answer questions from all of those levels. We do know that we don't have all the questions answered right now. And if you think you ask interesting questions, you should kind of hear some of the questions that we ask ourselves and kind of how we make this work and how we can work through the details of what this could be and might be. But if you think about a school and you think about an elementary versus a middle school versus a high school, you can go back, many years, or you can go back to December. And our students at our high schools just have a lot more choices and program choices available than our middle school and elementary students. So if you think about this as potentially another program that students might have choice to go into, the question for us is, how do we make that work, especially around a staffing piece? I know there are a lot of questions around, well, can't you just live stream things? Can't you just live stream? Well, let's think about that for a minute. And let's think about at any given time, we would have 150 classrooms in 2 high schools running. How much bandwidth does it take to live stream 150 classrooms? And what kind of equipment does it take? So some of those are some big hurdles for us to overcome. And we know that we have then privacy issues there as well. So there are lots of pieces that we've still got to work through, but we're gonna have probably more information coming out on July 20th than folks may want to digest. And even though that's in roughly 20 days, we're still 56 calendar days out from the first day of school, and how the landscape may change over that time could be considerable. So we're going to come out with this plan on July 20th. Pretty much all of the districts in the county are going to release their plans on about that same time. And then we're going to continue to pivot and be agile as whatever conditions might change between then and the start of school. But our goal, as we think about the start of school, is to offer options. So, Mehlville at home will be an option for families who may feel uncomfortable about sending their kids back to school in a global pandemic. What that's all going to look like, we're going to work out in the next couple of weeks. We've had a team of people working since April 21st on what return to school could look like. And they've been exploring lots of scenarios and possibilities. Actually, I sent them some new information just today that we had received, but we continue to stay pretty in tune to what's going on regionally across the state and across the nation. And I can say that what we're working on is pretty much in line with what I hear everywhere else. Contexts are a little bit different from community to community, and what you do in a 10,000 kid district is different than what you're going to be able to do in a 1,000 kid district or a 300 kid district. So there are going to be some subtle differences from place to place, but I think the large concepts will probably be close to the same that we'll see. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope you all have a nice rest of your evening, a good rest of the week, and a great 4th of July. Thank you, everyone.